Matra Devo Bhava. I pay my respects to my mother, my God. Pitra Devo Bhava. I pay my respects to my father, my God. Acharya Devo Bhava. I pay my respects to my teacher, my God. Atithi Devo Bhava. I pay my respects to my guest, my God. Growing up in India, this was one of the first prayers that my mother taught me and my siblings. I thank my mother for giving me life not once, but many times over. I thank my father for daring me to dream and develop the discipline to realize my dreams. I thank my teachers for the gift of knowledge, and I thank my guests for gracing my life. In April 1989, a guest, an uninvited guest, came to visit me in one of the most unlikely of places, a psychiatric ward, and gave me the gift of hope that changed my life forever. And it continues to transform the lives of thousands of people around the world. Her name was Aida. Aida was my husband's boss, Ralph's mother-in-law's friend. She had overheard Ralph tell his wife, Karen, about my recent suicide attempt and hospitalization, and had insisted on coming to see me at the hospital. Although I had never met Aida, she came to comfort me in my darkest hour of need. When my nurse, Nurse Sue, first told me that I had a visitor, I refused to meet her. I did not want anyone to see me in a mental hospital. But I remembered the prayer that my mother had taught me and realized I could not turn Aida away. It did not matter that I was in a mental hospital and she was a stranger who had come to see me. She was my guest, my Atithi, my God, and I needed to welcome her with love and respect. So I agreed to meet her. "Look at me," Aida said, sitting next to me on the hospital bed. But I could not look at her. I was filled with shame. "Look at me," Aida kept insisting, propping my chin up with her fingers. When I finally looked into her eyes, I nearly buckled into her arms. Aida was a beautiful Armenian woman in her 50s, with the grace of Jackie Kennedy and the compassion of Mother Teresa. Her very presence was healing. "I bet people look at you and wonder what in the world you have to be depressed about," Aida said. "Look at you. You're young, you have a loving husband, a beautiful little girl, and a fabulous future here in America. But I know that every day is a living nightmare for you. I know how worthless you feel when your little girl wants to play and all you want to do is to crawl into a closet and cry all day. I know how scared you are to live at the brink of suicide each day. And I know you believe that your family will be better off without a despicable woman like you." I stared at Aida, wondering how this stranger knew the darkest secrets of my soul. "But you're wrong, my darling," Aida said, pulling me closer into her arms. "I know you think there's no hope or treatment that'll ever help you feel better, but I promise you, you have the power within to overcome this disease and rebuild a beautiful life for yourself and your family. I know it won't be easy, but one day, one step at a time, you can do it. I know because I have struggled with depression ever since I was 18 years old." For the next 15 minutes or so, I listened to Aida in disbelief as she shared her struggles with depression and her relentless pursuit of recovery. For years, my family and physicians had insisted that I would get better. But I had no faith in their words. When all the medications and shock treatments and therapy had failed to heal me, I had lost faith in medicine. When all my prayers and that of my family had failed to rescue me from the dark hell of depression, I had lost faith in God. When a priest was invited home to exorcise the demons in me, and he molested me, I had lost faith in humanity. But I believed Aida when she said that I could recover. Because unlike my family and physicians, Aida had walked through the dark abyss of depression and emerged into the light. Although Aida's visit was short, she taught me a lot of lessons. Growing up in India, my only image of a woman with mental illness was that of a half-naked woman in tattered clothes, muttering incoherently, running down the streets of Bangalore, dogs chasing her, people pelting stones, calling her hoochie, crazy. I was terrified I was going to end up like her. Raised in a culture where mental illness is often thought as madness caused by demonic spirits, I had no concept of recovery. But meeting Aida and listening to her story completely changed my perception and helped me believe for the first time that I too could recover just as she had. Although Aida's visit was short, she gave me the gift of hope that has sustained me for a lifetime. Hope sees the invisible, feels the intangible, and achieves the impossible. Promise me you'll never kill yourself, no matter how hopeless you feel, Aida had asked before leaving, and I promised her I wouldn't. But my will to live was severely tested. Days after meeting Aida, I suffered a miscarriage, which only worsened my depression and suicidal ideation. I became paranoid that my husband was going to divorce me, take custody of our little girl, and move back to India because I had disgraced him and our family. Having no reason to live, I began to scream, "I want to die, I want to die." And I was locked up in the isolation cell for the second time in 10 days. Just before closing the door, Nurse Sue, tears misting her eyes, turned back and said, "Gayathri, I'm so sorry to have to lock you up again. I wish the hospital protocols were different. I know how painful the last few years have been for you. But believe me, you have the strength within to recover and rebuild your life." When the student is ready, the teacher appears, says a Buddhist proverb. I was ready. Nurse Sue's compassion and faith in me helped me see myself as a human being with potential, not merely a weak, hypersensitive, crazy woman. I realized mental illness can break my mind and the mental health system can confine my body, but there are no walls in this world that can contain my spirit. That night, as the darkness in my womb and the world around threatened to engulf me, I had an awakening. In a startling moment of clarity, I saw my choice. I could either die cursing the darkness, or I could emerge from this crucible a messenger of hope and healing. For every indignity that I had suffered in shame and silence, I promised to fight to restore my dignity and the dignity of others like me around the world. For every day that my family and I had lived in despair, I promised to bring hope to the lives of others like us. I had absolutely no idea how to realize my promise, but it kept me alive. One day, one purposeful step at a time, I began to rebuild my life. Unfortunately, as I began to get well, my brother was debilitated by depression, and my sister was ravaged by schizophrenia. Yet again, my family was tormented and torn apart by mental illness. Heartbroken, I began to wonder, are we the only family struggling with mental illness, or are there others like us? And I was shocked to learn that there are 450 million men, women, and children struggling with mental illness around the world. And most of them were not as fortunate as me and my family had been. I learned that mental illness affects 1 in 4 people and is the leading cause of disability worldwide. Yet, a majority of us do not receive the life-saving treatment and support we need. Instead, we are stigmatized, discriminated against, abused, abandoned, chained, institutionalized, and sometimes even left to die. In 2001, there was a tragic fire at a faith healing center in Ervadi, Tamil Nadu, South India. 28 people struggling with mental illness died in chains, unable to escape the fire that engulfed the thatched hut they were confined in. Although they had screamed for help, no one had come to their rescue. Here are a couple of images by John Stanmeyer, a photographer for Time Asia, depicting the deplorable conditions of mental health centers across Asia. Here's the image of a woman screaming behind bars at the Chipeng Center in Indonesia. It could have been me. Here is the image of children as young as 7 years old, locked behind bars in Adi village, Pakistan, where 1,000 mentally ill people live crammed together. Even here in America, the richest country in the world, our prisons have become our new asylums. While 50,000 people struggling with mental illnesses are seeking care in hospitals across the country, nearly 10 times that number, 500,000 mentally ill men and women are serving time in jails and prisons. Nearly 65% of boys and 75% of girls in juvenile detention have at least one mental illness. Children as young as 8 years old are incarcerated instead of being given the care they need. Nearly 33% of our homeless are struggling with serious mental illness. And the economic costs of mental illness will be more than cancer, diabetes, and respiratory ailments put together. Like many of you, I was deeply saddened by the suicidal death of Robin Williams. According to the World Health Organization, nearly 800,000 people lose their lives to suicide each year. Every 40 seconds, a person loses their life to suicide. Someone's child, mother, father, brother, sister, family member, or friend. In the short time that I have been granted to share my message with you today, 25 people will lose their life to suicide. And by the end of the day, nearly 2,200 people will lose their life to suicide. Dear friends, we see these faces, hear these numbers, and wonder, what can we do? How can we help? Like you, I was overwhelmed with the enormity of the task. I desperately wanted to make a difference, but had no idea what to do or how to help. I finally found comfort in Mother Teresa's wisdom. We want to create hope for the person and acceptance in the hearts of the people. We must give them hope, always hope, and remove the bitterness that's harming them when they're avoided by everyone. Compassion, love, understanding, that is what is important. We, the people living with mental illness, need love, compassion, understanding, hope, acceptance, and inclusion, much more than mere treatment and institutionalized care. So in April 2006, along with a dedicated group of mental health advocates right here in Portland, Oregon, I started ASHA International, a nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting mental health awareness and bringing hope and healing to people's lives. ASHA literally means hope in Sanskrit, one of the most ancient languages that originated in my home country, India, and in Hindi, India's national language. In English, ASHA is an acronym for A Source of Hope for All Touched by Mental Illness. At ASHA International, we offer people hope in all that we do, and we offer a wide variety of mental health education programs, wellness workshops, cultural competence trainings, peer support, referrals, and resources. When I first started ASHA International, all I wanted to do was to transform the lessons I had learned in pain to give hope to just one person struggling with mental illness. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine that I would have the opportunity to bring hope to thousands of people around the world. At a wellness workshop I was presenting in India a few years ago, I met Altaf, a young Muslim man struggling with depression. And I was overwhelmed with gratitude when he said, "It was my dream to be an architect. Due to my illness, this dream had turned to ashes. But new hope has arisen like a phoenix out of these ashes. Today's program and Gayathri have inspired me to fly again." 17 years from when I had made my promise in the isolation cell, I finally found a way to realize my promise and to pay Aida's gift of hope forward. Barb, an inmate at the Coffee Creek Correctional Facility in Wilsonville, Oregon, sent me a card one day. "Dear Indian woman," she wrote, "I'm sorry I can't remember your name, but thank you for coming and sharing your story. For the first time, I feel hopeful and can imagine a life beyond the confines of my illness in these prison walls." Altaf, Barb, and Aida taught me an important lesson. Mental illness has no barriers of age, gender, culture, or socioeconomic status. And more importantly, hope and healing have no boundaries. It did not matter that Altaf was a Muslim man and I was a Hindu woman. It did not matter that Barb was incarcerated and I was free. It did not matter that Aida was Armenian and I was Indian. The gift of hope unites and heals us all. I met Aida for the last time on March 12, 2014. Although her husband was in the hospital and she was in a wheelchair, Aida came to celebrate my book launch at the Powell City of Books. I'll cherish this picture of me and Aida forever. As always, she was whispering words of encouragement into my ears. Aida died 4 months later, but her legacy of hope will live on forever. Ladies and gentlemen, there is an Aida in every one of us. Each of us has the ability to reach out and embrace a person struggling with mental illness with love and compassion. Each of us has the ability to give them hope and help them on their road to recovery. There are 3 things all of us can do to give hope. Number 1, reach out and show you care. If you know a family member or a friend is struggling with a mental illness, reach out, call them, visit them, let them know they're not alone. Encourage them to get help, offer them support. Perhaps you can offer to babysit their children when they go to a therapist appointment. Perhaps you can invite them to go for a walk or a yoga class. Number 2, share your story. If you're living with a mental illness, share your story. It is the most effective way to educate people about mental illness, eliminate stigma, and let people know that recovery is possible. Number 3, get involved. Please give your time, talent, and money to support organizations promoting mental health awareness and providing housing, job training, peer support, and healthcare services for people with mental illness. Advocate for workplace accommodations to help people with mental illness get and keep their jobs. Invest in ongoing research to discover the causes and cures for mental illness. Campaign for mental health parity to make sure that everybody that needs treatment can afford it. Ladies and gentlemen, like Aida taught us, a random act of kindness can give hope and change a life forever. Be the hope, change a life, and heal the world, one person at a time. Namaste.